the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started this morning, I wanted to note the passing of Dwayne Denton, Town Fire Marshal, our Assistant Emergency Services Coordinator. Dwayne was a really special employee and very community-minded person, always a pleasure to be around, and we will sorely miss him, and our thoughts and prayers go out to his family and friends, and I just ask that we just have a moment of silence in memory of Dwayne Denton. So normally we start our meeting with the public portion where any member of the public may speak on any matter. We always ask that you try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Today, I'll be taking public comments, except for comments on the airport. We'd like to ask that anyone who wishes to discuss the airport wait until after the presentation, and we'll take public comments after the airport presentation. Jason, we have any callers on the line?
Yes, we have one caller on the line, and I will let them through right now. Give me a second.
And is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on any matter other than the airport?
Hello, caller ending 0431. You are on the air. Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, do you wish to speak on anything else but the airport?
On the airport, and so are we holding those comments until after?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
But we have no one else.
But we have one more caller. They just called in. Let me just unmute them. And hello, caller ending 4010.
Good morning. At a meeting of the board a month ago, I noted that the town effectively charges taxpayers who do not own automobiles higher fees for trash disposal than are charged to taxpayers who do own automobiles. And I observed that this is apparently inequitable. I pointed out that issuing permits that could be used without associated automobile registration would impose almost no administrative burden on the town. And I argued that to insist on car ownership in order to obtain a public benefit is bad public policy. From what I can see in the public record, the board has not only not taken up this issue, but a few days later you adopted a fee schedule that continues to penalize taxpayers and residents who do not own cars. So I would appreciate if you would explain here on the record why the board feels it's just and proper for East Hampton to charge taxpayers who do not own automobiles more to dispose of their trash than you charge car owners. Thank you.
Could you please state your name for the record?
I'm sorry, Stuart Dester.
Could you spell your last name, Stuart? I didn't quite hear it right.
Sure, D-E-S-S-E-R, Delta Echo Sierra, Sierra Echo Romeo.
Roger that. So this, frankly, I think this is the first instance where we've had anyone bring this issue forward. I'm curious how you utilize the transfer station if you don't have a car.
I'm sorry, I missed that last part.
I'm curious how you utilize our transfer station if you don't have a car.
Well, I would use a rental car on occasion. I don't usually have a rental car. I usually go out by train and bike. And there have been occasions that I've brought my trash to the transfer station by bike as well, bicycle.
Okay. That's something the board can take up. Again, it's an unusual circumstance. And I know that a lot of people do also use trash collection services who might be in your situation, but perhaps we could register your bicycle.
You could, but that for for larger items, I will use a rental car when I have one, and that's the more difficult. In fact, in the past, years ago, you did issue a permit to me to come by bicycle. And for daily trash, that's practical, but sometimes that's not practical, and a car is necessary.
Understood. Well, we'll have to talk to the clerk and see if there's a way that we can accommodate your request.
Okay, and I'm asking for this just to be clear, not only for myself. I expect there would be other people who are similarly situated, who simply have not brought the issue to you.
Okay, we appreciate you calling in.
Okay, may I follow up with you in a month?
Absolutely. Feel free.
Great, thank you very much.
And if you would like to, if you could just email us with the request so we have a way to correspond with you.
To Carol Brennan?
To Carol Brennan or to the supervisors? Or to the supervisor's office is fine.
If you could just tell me the email address for the supervisor's office.
It's listed on the website, but it's my first initial, last name, P. Van Scoik at ehamptonny.gov.
Great. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Thanks for calling, sir. Jason, do we have any other callers on the line who want to speak about something other than the airport?
We have one new caller, and I will unmute them right now. Hello, caller ending 1213. You are on the air.
Good morning. No comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll get back to those who wish to speak about the airport after the airport presentation. At this point, let's move on with the first agenda topic, which is Route 114, Stephen Hand's Path redesign. And we have our Councilman David Lease and Steve Lynch, our Superintendent of Highways. I think Steve is on the line, Jason?
Yes, he is joining right now via Zoom.
Great, thank you so much. So as many in the community know, the Stephen Hand's Path intersection with Route 114 has had a number of issues relating to traffic safety as well as drainage. And we're going to be hearing from the councilman and highway superintendent about the proposed state project improving that intersection.
Thank you very much. It's weird to be over here. You have to say. Sorry.
Hey, David.
Thank you very much, Peter. Yes, Route 114 and Stephen Hand's Path right now has become one of our most traveled intersections in the town of East Hampton. There's historical legacy infrastructure engineering issues that are in this location. It's on a large water course also. Anyone that's traveled 114 this past couple of weeks, and specifically today, has noticed that the state is moving forward right now with increasing their drainage structures, and then also they're putting in and they're milling and paving this area as part of a long-term re-asphalting that Assemblyman Thiel has helped on. We are joined here. I have a PowerPoint presentation. That's why I'm over here today to help address it. Today, who we have right now is our Superintendent of Highway, Steve Lynch, then also representatives from LK McLean, Jim Peterman, and Gary Gentile with us too. I'm going to screen share, and Jason, just let me know when this comes up appropriately.
All good.
Great. Thank you very much. I hope that's coming up for everyone. Again, hello. My name's Councilman David Lease. I'm the liaison to the Highway Department. And we are here to talk about Stephen Hand's Path for drainage improvements and Route 114 intersection safety improvements. We have a project team, as I just mentioned, representatives from LK McLean Engineering, East Hampton Town Superintendent of Highways, Steve Lynch. We also do this project in coordination with the New York State Department of Transportation and their engineering firms, GPI Engineering. I want to just let everyone know what the purpose of this discussion is and the purpose of our potential project. First of all, is to increase public safety by adding turning lanes, to provide a safer intersection to reduce potential accidents. Also, as many might be aware that travel this area, at the same time addressing historical flooding and stormwater runoff accidents in this specific project area. Steve, do you want to address some of the flooding issues that we have seen in this area here in the past? Steve, are you with us?
Steve's in the room, but he's muted and his video is off.
Okay. So as you can see in one of the pictures here, I also have a video I will show everyone. This is flooding looking southwest towards Stephen Hand's Path right now. It's a large water course in which a lot of our stormwater runoff runs into this street and becomes a very dangerous intersection. What I'm going to do 1 second, if this doesn't play for us, is if you give me 1 second, I'm going to stop the screen share.
Sure.
I'm going to play a video. Is this sharing on the video?
Let's see if it opens.
Not yet.
It hasn't come up yet.
Okay.
Did you double click it?
Oh, there we go.
Okay. So this is going from the intersection with Long Lane, heading down towards Stephen Hand's Path. This is a rain that was probably 1.5 inches rain some time ago. But what you can see is all the stormwater runoff right now that's coming off the fields. What happens, it gets to a point right now, into the low point in which you're seeing the water rise to such a level right now that it becomes a public safety hazard right now. Traffic's going in the middle of the street. You can't move to the sides of the street right now. Cars could get disabled there. This section of the road has been shut off at times. What happens when a road gets shut off? Emergency services suffer. They can't go through this way. They have to go longer around other routes, and it becomes a very public safety hazard, not just from automobile traffic, but specifically also from emergency response time. This is now coming to the intersection of 114, where you can see this road is still flooded in these areas, and there is historic legacy drainage already that's here right now, but it's just not working enough to capture the stormwater. As we come over 114 down towards Squire's Path, you can see the drainage basin on the right side that is completely full, and as we are traveling at the rate of speed behind, it looks like a cement mixer on there, you're still seeing the cement mixer stop. Who wants to be in the middle of the road with that car? Not me. And then you see all the traffic stop to stop for even a greater amount of stormwater runoff right now that's flowing south as we go. So this is the the historical and the current drainage issues that we're having in this area. I'm going to stop this. I hope I can do that. I'm going to go back to another screen share, Jason. Back to the presentation. Great. So it is not going anywhere. Give me 1 second, everyone. I apologize. Great. Okay. We do have vehicular traffic concerns in this area. According to East Hampton Town Police Department, there have been 46 vehicular accidents that have been reported since 2014. Again, there's a very large volume of traffic that goes into this location. And one of those reasons can be blind corners, but also that there's only one turning lane in all these avenues of traffic right now. And that's the area that's coming out of Northwest Woods. Again, this is Stephen Hand's Path. This is an old historic route in which Stephen Hand would go up to Hands Creek. And was originally designed and made for horse and wagons, a lot like what our areas are out here, most of our roads were. But now we have to look at it as far as infrastructure in the day and age that we're living in right now. I want to invite Jim Peterman up to the microphone, if you don't mind, Jim. He's going to go through some of our next slides. And Jim, you just tell me when you want me to move on to the next one.
Sure. Thank you for having me, everyone. This shows some of the watershed that down to Stephen Hand's Path. What you're looking at is Stephen Hand's Path running north-south up and down on the screen, and the 114 watershed limits would be running east, west, left to right on the screen. So we have a large sections of watersheds or sub-watersheds that naturally flow down to Stephen Hand's Path, probably historically for hundreds of years. Previously to being farmland, it was probably wooded and not as, say, bigger flow as there is now. What you see is, what you saw in the video was not a problem of storing the water, because when you got far enough south of 114, you saw the water from the roadway just disappear into the property, on the west side of the highway, into the open space property. So our project basically addresses the conveyance of water. As it accumulates on the roadway, we're actually, instead of going overland, we're sending it into some pipes, and we're sending it into some open channels. We're using the open channels to help slow the water down and have some of the silts. Once you get below like a 1 foot per second of flow in a channel, 90% of your suspended solids drop out. So that would help clean up that dirty water that does flow into the open space parcel. Next slide.
Sure.
All right. This is not part of McLean's project. LKMA was hired by the town of East Hampton to do the drainage improvements. As we got into the design of this project, we contacted the state, because it's a state intersection, to get their as-built plans. They let us know that they were in the process of doing an intersection improvement. This is one of, I believe, 4 or 5 intersections they're doing is one project. It's not the project they're milling now. The state has a where and when paving program. That's what they're doing now. This project that you see before you on the screen is scheduled for 2024 to be constructed. It's independent of the work going on out there right now. They are in the right-of-way process. What the state project does is it addresses the safety issues that evolve at the intersection with high turning movement counts. So it's going to give protected lefts and a right turn lane where it's needed. So they did a lot of research on it, a lot of traffic counts, summer counts. So they'll time the signal to best adjust for traffic safety. Like I said, that's an independent project than the LKMA project. Fortunately for the town, see the limits north and south on 114 on Stephen Hand's Path, they're going quite a distance. That's something the town's not going to have to do. On our drainage project, we're going to do some improvements into this intersection, drainage improvements, and rely on some existing piping. And when the state comes in and does the intersection, they'll be topping all this, paving it and widening it, and then adding additional drainage, which would actually have taken some of the cost away from the town. So that worked out well as far as timing. This is a view of the state plans at the intersection. You can see, I don't know if it makes a point here or anything.
You can also, there's a pen at the on the board over there. So next to the board, there's a small little stylus there that's attached over there. You can do an annotation, and everyone at home and on the board will see it. Right.
Jim, I believe it's on the crossbar down there.
Yeah, the crossbar. That's what it's called. Thank you.
Oh, there you go.
And if you tap that, there's a small little arrow, a pen that comes up over to the bottom left-hand corner. That's the annotation button. Do you see that guy?
Just like John Madden.
There it is. Oh, no.
The left, or in the left corner.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, now you have full annotation.
Okay. So on the town job, we'll be putting new, heavier, larger pipe in to this structure right here. There's an existing structure here that
Jim, I have the. You want me to bring up the town work site?
Yeah, the town plan with the red, yeah, that would be better. Okay. What you see in red here This is actually in red. There's an existing 24-inch pipe that runs here. That's basically not large enough to take all the flow heading north. That's north to the right of the screen on Stephen Hand's Path. So you're coming south this way towards 114. This 24-inch pipe that goes to a 2x2 culvert, and another 24-inch pipe that dumps into the southwest. There is a little trapezoidal drainage ditch on behind the guardrail there. It's not really big enough. We saw that in the video. So on the town project, to the north of the intersection, we're running some bigger pipe and some open channel flow where we have some excess right-of-way to use. So we'll be replacing this basin here, putting all new pipe in here. And the lines that you see in red here, this here is actually going to be installed by New York State when they do their job. So in the interim between the two projects, this pipe will handle what it can. And in an extreme storm, until the state job is done, you may see water coming out of here and going across the intersection. But that will only be approximately a year. What added a big problem to this, not a problem, but something that we had to overcome, there's a buried oil static electric line right here that basically, I was told, supplied half the east end. It carries so much voltage in there, it actually has an oil encasement to keep it cool. So we have to stay 2 feet. They don't let you go anywhere 2 feet near that. And it's pretty deep already. So this pipe is deep. So this pipe is shallow. It drops into this basin, and to get underneath 114, this we could show you on a plan profile, but this pipe is deep, and it made this trapezoidal channel that we're going to run, on the west side of Stephen Hand's Path, a little deeper than we want it to be. But we do the 1-on-2 slope. I wanted some open channel flow down there to, like I said before, help have all the suspended solids drop out, because the velocity in this pipe right here, it's basically has a capacity of 38 cubic feet per second of amount of water that flows through there, but the velocity is over 5. When we dump into an open channel, a trapezoidal channel, the velocity drops to like 0.72 feet per second, and at that point, the suspended solids will drop out. The mud flow.
Can you just talk about it? So part of the suspended solids and the location we're trying to capture is that suspended solids also will stop future drainage. So we need to be able to design this for future maintenance in an area that we're trying to get those solids to drop out of, because as we know, the farm fields are full of silt. And that's one of the problems with any type of drainage that we have in the town, is that they get silted up. We're looking to design a project right now that would trap the and capture the drainage that's coming almost all the way up from Long Lane, all the way down, but also allow for long-term maintenance right now then too. So it'll work better. If I just move to the next slide. This is sorry about that. That's okay.
Don't worry, I'll clear the drawings.
This here is something I've been working with Jim also and Steve Lynch right now, specifically about Stephen Hand's Path, because this is a portion of the road that we're going to be dealing with. Is connectivity. It reminds me of actually something that Zach Cohen always kept asking for, bike lanes. The major bike lane coming 114, but we also have one on the county road, which is, I forget what, Peter, you might know, county road, whatever Long Lane is. 59. Thank you, 59. So what this might allows for is that we can actually have bike connectivity now from 114, Stephen Hand's Path, Long Lane, right down into the village. So this is part of our long range look at our paving, is to be able to allow for bike connectivity into the area also then too. Let me just go through here. Do you want to just go through some of these potential timeframes on here, Jim, how it works?
Yeah, I mean, this is hopefully the schedule. We'll see how it plays out. But we were hoping to get this project bid in the late summer. And construction started this fall on this project, on the town project on Stephen Hand's Path, to be completed by next beginning of May. They say May 1st. The New York State intersection, improvement project is intended to start in the spring of 24 and be done by the fall of 24. So it's good timing in the effect that both entities and both contractors won't be in there at the same time. We'll have all the infrastructure in place for them to improve the intersection without having to do a lot of extra drainage work, because the state doesn't have any way to put this water either. You could put as many leaching basin in it as you want. Like Dave mentioned, this silt latent runoff, it just clogs up a leaching basin in the first storm. It renders it pretty much useless.
So just going to the questions on it. Steve, are you on the line? Can you hear us? Give him one last chance.
Do we want to give him does anyone have his cell phone, or give him a quick text or a ring?
I know he's paving out of Montauk today, so he's been working out there. Primarily what in discussions with Steve is that this intersection right now is his number one priority right now when it comes to drainage in the town of East Hampton. Historically, it's been flooding. Ice is over. It takes a lot of manpower right now to clean it. And then there's the emergency response time. So what we wanted to do right now is let the public know that there's two projects in this location, one being the town for drainage, the other road surfacing, widening, and traffic flow. It's a state project in which the state is actually already, they've had public hearings on this already, virtual public hearings. You can reach out to the DOT or come through my office or Steve's office. We can get you more information. I know that two of the joining neighbors have reached out to the town also then too. They might be watching this, but we want to let everyone know what we're trying to accomplish, why we're trying to accomplish it. And if you have any questions or concerns, please let us know. And to the board, I don't know if you got Jim, myself, and Gary here. I don't know if there's any questions or concerns on the presentation and what is upcoming.
Board members have any questions?
No, I just have a quick comment, and that is, I think this is very timely, David, as we're working on updating the CARP, Coastal Assessment and Resiliency Plan. Transportation are one of the areas that are vulnerable as we go into future impacts for climate change. So I think this is a very good timing for this project.
Yeah, just to add on to that, Kate, I've noticed in the 30 plus years of living over in that direction and having to cross Stephen Hand's path that the number of times that road is closed has increased considerably. Even though our annual average rainfall hasn't increased by that much, it's coming in torrents when it does come. And so I think there were something like a dozen times that road was closed in the past year or so. It's certainly something that needs to be addressed, and I'm glad to see that it's moving forward. And thank you, David, for shepherding the project.
Thank you.
Liaison to highway.
From the town side of it, the drainage is completely needed, and I look forward to the state's aspect of the design of the intersection, because I think maybe if it was 46 I mentioned there, those are reported accidents. Who knows how many aren't there? And for the public safety, I look forward to seeing the state moving forward on that. And again, Jim's done great with coordinating with the state and leaning on the state to get the state to do some of the work on the drainage and saving the town a couple $100,000 on the potential project. So Jim and your staff, Gary, I want to thank you very much, and also Steve then too.
So my only comment is that, as you look at this intersection, it now becomes a very large intersection with a lot of lanes. On Stephen Hand's path, you're going to end up with 4 lanes on Stephen Hand's path. And this is the hard balance, that you want to keep your community looking rural, and you've got an issue with flooding that is impacting a lot of other citizens. And it's difficult for me to look at this actually and see how many lanes of travel are needed. I think the drainage definitely, it's gotten worse. I think as supervisor said, over the years, and it comes in buckets. It doesn't come anymore as nice rain. I am concerned about the farm stand that's there. It's a very busy farm stand, and I think you need to work with Hardscrabble to make sure that people can turn around. It's busy during Christmas season because they sell Christmas trees. It's hard enough already to go there and make those turns. So I think you need to make sure that we work with him so that because I can see that we're going to be using some of the right of way there. So I thank you, David, for bringing this. When I was the liaison to the East Hampton CAC, this was certainly one of their major concerns in trying to deal with this. So, David, thanks so much.
Well, I thank Steve. Steve's the one that brought it, and I'm sort of just riding along with it then too. But as a person that's been out here, there is that balance. And
I know.
this is going to be the tough ones, you know, but
This is a tough one.
yeah, agree with you.
Yes, sir. I saw you raise your hand. Did you have a comment on this particular? For this topic, we will. If you have a comment, please come to the podium and state your name for the record.
Oh, over here. I'm Walter Donway. I live right on the corner of Stephen Hand's Path and 114. Not the big white house with the donkeys and the horse. The other side, the house that used to be called the Water Wheel House with a pond. We have anyone who lives now a half mile from any direction of the intersection has an appalling problem. We all know the traffic has increased, right? You can do anything about that. There are a lot of trucks. Hey, that's how we move our stuff. But there's another thing that has just destroyed our peace, which is the noise cars. These cars that are equipped with aftermarket mufflers, they're stick shift. This is a wonderful place to drag race because you start from the light, you got a clear shot in both directions, and they gun it, you know, through first gear and then boom into second gear and then boom, you can hear it for a mile. And we're trying to sell the house now. My wife can't stand it. I use earplugs every night to try to get to sleep. When you hear these things very frequently, and it's a deliberate thing, you know, I call them cartel wannabe drivers. But anyway, this is a very deliberate thing. Now, I don't know if you know that the state has enacted legislation against these noise cars. New York City put up a scream because they were meeting and drag racing. And again, they have souped up these cars with aftermarket mufflers. So that is going to come into effect. I hope I'm not the only one encouraging our police to enforce it. Apparently, the law requires every police car to have a decibel counter now. When we've talked to individual policemen about, can you do anything for us? They've said, well, we can't really have a decibel counter, so we don't know if they're over, but they are. And there's a lot of studies, you know, showing that noise at this level, uncertain noise keeps them, really has a big effect on stress. I mean, there are a lot of studies about it. And also, you know, they're disturbing the peace and nobody's doing anything about it. So I just talked to my real estate. We're trying to sell the house. It's not that easy on that corner anymore. I mean, we love it, but we can't take the noise. Our real estate agent, Michael Schultz, you probably know Michael Schultz, said it probably the only hope we had of doing anything was to have a really good sound fence. He said, you know, he talked 10, 12 feet high and built against noise. He said, I don't know if the town will build it for you. And I said, I sure don't know either, but they might let you build it because this is an exceptional problem on this. Unless the police, you know, ticket enough there so the word goes out, hey, we can't drag race here anymore. Let's try somewhere else. So just wanted to put it on the.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time to address the issue.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks. Jason, do we have any callers on the line?
We have no new callers. One person's just still waiting for the airport.
All right, at this point, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the final rules and regulations for JPX, the LOC ID for the new airport, beginning May 19th. And do we have our outside consultants?
That we do.
On the line?
We have Andrew Barr and William O'Connor.
Great. If you could bring both those gentlemen, appreciate it.
On the way.
And I think before we start, I just want to clarify the final rules and regulations are final for probably this season, but in the big picture, they are subject to change. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Peter. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Because we're waiting for Bill to join also.
Yeah, Bill is in the room. We're just waiting for video and audio.
Okay, good morning, Bill.
He's still connecting his audio.
And I will turn it over to you to walk us through the secret study phase, data collection, and final PPR framework for the 2022 season.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen. If you could just confirm that what you're seeing is the PowerPoint, I think that'll facilitate things.
Yep.
PowerPoint
Yes,
is
we
on.
have it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Not
Can-
quite
Can you maximize the
full screen
screen?
yet.
You're not seeing a full screen?
Yeah,
No.
you have to go
No,
to the
it's not.
presentation mode on the PowerPoint.
Okay. Give me a minute. I might be sharing the wrong actual screen.
No, it's you're. Yep, there you go.
There we go.
Got it.
Perfect. That's
That's
the
it.
wrong screen. I'm sorry about that.
There we go. Well, good morning, Mr. Supervisor, members of the town board. We have a presentation today. First, I wanted to give an update on where we are with the change in status of the airport from public use to private use. And then Andrew's going to take us through the refined PPR framework that's based on all the comments and feedback that you've received. First, starting with the activation and deactivation process, the headline here is we're on track. Through a lot of work and effort by the town board and its consultants, working collaboratively with the FAA, the timelines that we set out in February, we are going to meet. There are a couple of important steps to the process. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into each of these bullets and the steps along the way. But in terms of deactivating what was HTO, the FAA has issued their no objection letter, and that will occur on May 17th at 11:59 p.m. The next step as part of the process is the activation of the new private use airport. As we've talked about, that was subject to a new airspace study, new determination by the FAA that the airspace around the airport is in fact safe. That too was the subject of a no objection letter from the FAA, setting out a activation time of 9 a.m. on May 19th. As part of this process, the airport was assigned a new identifier. So come May 19th, the airport that we've referred to for years as HTO will become JPX. I'll have to come up with something for me to remember that. My youngest son, Henry, who was born a couple of years ago, is Henry Terrence O'Connor. So I don't know how I'm going to figure that one out, but that's our new airport identification ID. As we stated before, the town and the FAA are working collaboratively to deliver a safe new airport that has as many operational capabilities as possible. And again, more good news. It is anticipated that all capabilities will be available upon opening. Last time I was before you to talk about this process, we weren't sure about the availability of instrument procedures, and we believe that issue has been solved through the great work of flight tech and the collaboration with Jim Brundage and all the airport users that have applied. Next slide, please. The deactivation timeline was a date that was selected by the FAA to coincide with their charting cycles. That will allow for no disruption in terms of how the FAA identifies and puts out information regarding airports throughout the country. And that was a date that was worked on collaboratively with the FAA. During the deactivation period, the airport will be completely out of commission, unavailable for use. That means all runways, taxiways, navigational aids, et cetera. Of course, your tenants, other people with access to the airport will continue to use the facilities in that way, but you won't be able to use the air navigational facilities at the airport for any reason during that closure period. May 19th, 9 a.m. in the morning, the new airport will be activated. As I mentioned, this coincides with the FAA charting cycles, and we expect to have all safety and operational capabilities will be available. There are a few things that go into this, and there was a lot of work that went into solving for all of these issues in this unprecedented circumstance. As I mentioned, you have a new airport identifier, JPX. All of your communication aids will be available to airport users upon activation of the new airport, and that involved a series of agreements, working through agreements with the FAA and also obtaining some equipment. The weather aids will be available. This is the automated weather system that is made available to all users of the airport. All navigational aids will also be available. The air traffic control tower is set to open on the Saturday before Memorial Day, and that's consistent with the tower opening prior seasons when the airport was a public use airport. And then the instrument procedures, or what we call special procedures, because of their unique use at a private use airport, they are expected to be available on May 19th. One of the things that the town offered to do was to help package up applications to use these special use procedures. There is a process that has to be applied for in order to use them. We were able to help expedite, and that's in process, any applications that came in to use the special procedures by April 8th. And I'm happy to report that you have over 110 airport users have applied for those special use procedures, so they could take advantage of that when the airport is activated on May 19th. That's not the only opportunity to do it, but that was a window that we made available that we could package those applications up and expedite them. So everything is on track for this change in status from public use to private use. There will be a short closure period, but through a lot of hard work and effort, the new airport will have all of the operational capabilities that you've worked hard to maintain. With that, I'll turn over the discussion to my colleague, Andrew Barr, who's going to be running through where we are, where you are as a town board, as far as we understand in terms of the PPR for this upcoming summer season, which will be part of the secret process that you've implemented. Andrew, take it away.
Thanks, Bill, and morning, town board. We've spent a lot of time over the past couple of weeks looking at the public comments, thinking about the right way to study the impacts of this PPR framework over the course of the season. And this is just going to be, as Peter mentioned at the outset, this is what will govern for the 2022 season, but of course things could change as the final GEIS for the secret process is completed. To recap, and this is things that we talked about when we talked about the proposed framework before receiving public comment, the real goal here is to collect actual data. We've done a lot of tabletop exercises. There's a lot of simulations that went on last year with HMMH's reports, and obviously the town board was very involved with that whole process. But we really can't get specific data for a handful of unique reasons related to this airport. And with that said, in collaboration with Secret Council, it became apparent that we just needed to collect actual data. But in order to do that, we have sorry, yeah, I have a little feedback. Sorry. In order to receive that actual data, we need to change the status of the airport from public use to private use, and that is the process Bill was just discussing. That'll happen between May 17 and May 19. At 9 a.m. on May 19, we'll have the opportunity to institute the rules and regulations, which were posted to the town website yesterday. And as part of those rules and regulations, there's the landing fees in the PPR framework. And those will govern for this 2022 season to allow that actual data collection to exist. You know, the town board does retain the ability to be flexible and adjust the PPR throughout the season or after the season, but it is the town board's intention to have this 2022 season use the same PPR, the PPR I'm about to discuss, throughout the entire season. And that really is motivated in large part by the data collection aspect of the secret study. The community will see some changes from what we proposed about a month ago to what the town board has decided to use for the season itself. And that is in large part because of community feedback and discussions with stakeholders. So we appreciate the community taking the opportunity seriously to provide feedback. And I hope the community recognizes the town board took that feedback seriously and making some changes to the proposed PPR. Last thing to note, and this goes in towards the timing, is at the end of the season with the data we've collected, it will go into a final GEIS. And as part of that final GEIS, the town board will have the ability to really understand what, if any, impact the PPR had on the not only the East Hampton town airport, but the neighboring airports, the community at large. And with that data in hand, we do anticipate there could be some changes to the PPR moving forward. So getting into the PPR framework itself, and just for everyone's collective benefit, PPR means prior permission required. And with the town's PPR, this is not a ban on any aircraft, it's not a ban on any operator, and it's not a ban on any category of aeronautical activity. It's instead a grouping of permissions that will be working together to try to balance the community's interests in really gaining local control over the East Hampton town airport, but also allowing aviation stakeholders to use the airport in a responsible and community-sensitive way. And I guess the last, but perhaps maybe most important thing to focus on here is that the general aviation community, the community that has, in large part, not truly impacted the complaint data and things of that nature, really isn't affected at all by the PPR. They should be able to operate at the airport very similarly to how they have in the past. And that was an intentional decision made by the town board. One other set of decisions that the town board made, and this was in conjunction with discussions with the FAA, is we are not relying on the FAA or FAA air traffic controllers to do anything for this PPR framework. The PPR framework instead will be dealt with on a post hoc basis, meaning that an aircraft will be able to land at the airport if cleared by the FAA to do so. If that aircraft violates the PPR, the town will use an enforcement mechanism on the back end to enforce not only the PPR, but whatever penalty structure would be appropriate for that violation, if in fact it is a violation. The PPR does not apply to public, military, or emergency operations. We've had a lot of discussions with the New York Police Department helicopter unit, their aviation unit, to discuss this and make sure that they will be able to access the airport if needed. And the town has made it very clear that those types of operations can come and go as needed because emergency services are not impacted by the PPR at all. And looking in terms of cumulative impacts, these numbers really haven't changed too much from what we talked about a month ago. But we anticipate, and again, this is using tabletop data as opposed to real data. We won't have that real data until after the season. But we anticipate that about 40% of operations will be impacted by the PPR, meaning that the airport should experience about 40% less operations. But that 40% was an important 40% because it'll address upwards of 70% of complaints. So the town board has really tried hard to find the most problematic operations and reduce the number of those so that the community can have some relief. Getting into the PPR itself, and this is found in the rules and regulations in the attachment section. The time-based permission, all operators will be able to operate at the new airport Monday through Thursday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and federal holidays from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And this was a direct reaction to comments that several community members made that on weekends, they'd enjoy the ability to have more quiet time, to enjoy the serene nature of the town. And the town board tried to address that by having a reduced amount of operating hours on the weekend time where people are spending time outside with their family. This type of curfew would impact 13% of operations, but it would address almost 40% of complaints. So this type of time-based permission really did a lot to address some of the negative impacts the airport users have on the community itself. Going to operator-based permissions, both commercial and fractional ownership operators, meaning for the aviation crowd, Part 135 or Part 91K, all of those operators are permitted to operate one daily round trip per aircraft. And a round trip means one takeoff and one landing. And this will all be tracked by the airport's vector VNOMS system on a registration number basis, meaning that if the same tail number lands at the airport more than once in a day, it'll be a violation of the PPR. The enforcement, however, is not on a tail number basis, it's on an operator basis. So if an operator has more than one aircraft, if just one of those aircraft violate the PPR, that violation would impact all of the operator's aircraft. And that's discussed in more detail in the rules and regulations themselves, which, as I noted, were published on the town board's website yesterday. The impact of this is 13% of total operations, but it's almost a quarter of commercial operations or fractional ownership operations and upwards of 35% of complaints. So again, this was the town board's effort of finding a way to really pick out those most problematic operations and still allow them to occur in a measured way, but to reduce the strain on the community by limiting to one round trip per aircraft. A very similar approach is for noise-based permissions. Any aircraft with a noise signature of 91.0 EPNDB or higher can have one round trip per day. The EPNDB level is the same level that was used in the 2015 laws. And back in 2015, the town published a list of aircraft that would be violating based on the FAA's Advisory Circular 36-1H. There's really no reason to think any of those numbers would have changed. And that's a really good reference for individuals trying to understand exactly what aircraft would be affected by this noise threshold. However, based on community feedback, the town wanted to be clear, although it never had the intention of considering fixed-wing piston-driven noisy aircraft in the first instance. To be clear, fixed-wing piston-driven aircraft are presumed to be not noisy. There's always the outside chance that one aircraft is particularly noisy, and the airport director does have the ability to go inquire what exactly is going on with that operator and make an operator-based decision if that aircraft is noisy. But as a general matter, if you're flying fixed-wing, piston-driven aircraft that's larger than the general aviation crowd, you're presumed to be a not noisy aircraft. This impact is 6% of operations, but it does eliminate 11% of the noisy operations, which again, if you're looking at the complaints, is 20% of complaints. So this is just another example of the town board trying to find that balance between the most problematic operations, but also allowing business to continue at the airport. In terms of size-based permissions, there's no permission for aircraft to operate at the airport at any time if they have a max takeoff weight of 50,000 pounds or heavier. The max takeoff weight is an objective standard that's issued by the operator and is controlled by the FAA. So this isn't looking at a particular airplane on a particular day and something that can be manipulated by the number of passengers, the amount of fuel. Instead, this is just an objective number. Some aircraft will be excluded, others will not. If you look at how this will impact jet operations, which is really what we're talking about at this weight threshold, about 20% of commercial jet operations would be not permitted, and 13% of total jet operations would be not permitted by this size-based permission. And the point here, the goal here, is to keep the local aspect of the airport and preserve the lifespan of the runways and taxiways. Now that the town will be funding, I mean, the town's been doing this for 20 years, but now that the town will still be funding the runways and taxiways at the airport, it's important to think about preserving those assets. And one way to do that is to reduce the heaviest aircraft. For environmental-based permissions, the town board is watching very closely what the FAA is doing and what aircraft manufacturers are doing to find a way to transition out of lead-based fuels and ultimately away from fossil fuels. But to be fair to the airport operators, it's hard to put a specific time at which that will actually be available in a meaningful way. And until the FAA comes out with specific timing, the town board will not put a specific sunset clause on lead-based or fossil fuel-based aircraft, but it is coming. And the town is also considering using a portion of the landing fees, and those landing fees are part of the rules and regulations also in the attachments. But the town is considering using a portion of landing fees to do carbon offsets or carbon credits. And that would be one way to respond to the notion that some aircraft are especially problematic from a greenhouse gas or carbon emission standpoint, and try to offset the impact that aircraft has by some form of carbon credit system. And the town is still investigating what that could look like. A few more additional permissions to think about. For anyone who wants to do ultralight vehicles, which are part 1 of 3 vehicles for the aviation crowd, banner towing, skydiving, operation of stage 1 or stage 2 of jet, which shouldn't occur, or touch and go operations, need to have prior written permission from the airport director before that can happen. And that permission could happen on an operator-specific basis, meaning that the operator speaks with the airport director and the airport director says yes or no. Or it could be in attachment C to the rules and regulations, which specifically anticipates that there might be things that the airport director does or does not permit, just based on the airport director's understanding of the safety and efficiency side of the airport and what is or is not going to be acceptable there. So I would recommend that operators interested in doing any of these things speak with the airport director to understand exactly what is or is not permitted, and that they have written permission to do any of these things before they do it to avoid violating the PPR. In terms of enforcement, the rules and regulations set forth a very specific enforcement section. The town code also talks about enforcement, so I won't get into that today other than to reference airport users and interested parties to go look at the rules and regulations or the updated Chapter 75 of the town code. The one thing I will highlight is that the town also has the ability to enforce local county or state laws if someone violates the PPR. It would be akin to trespassing on property. So although you do have a full enforcement suite inside the rules and regulations in Chapter 75, it isn't exclusive of what other options the town board would have and the town itself would have if there is especially some type of intentional violation. So with that, town board, if there's any questions or comments, I'm happy to address them. Otherwise, we appreciate your time and the very significant attention that you've paid to this, especially the public comment over the past few weeks.
Thank you, Andrew. Any board members have any questions or comments on the presentation?
Andrew, I just had one question about the public comments. Is there a place where the public can see what those comments were, not necessarily who made them, but just what the comments were?
My understanding is that AKRF, as part of the draft scoping, will have some summary of the comments, and that's where those comments were received, how we actually got them. And my understanding is that'll be available in the next couple of weeks, not only for the town board review, but as part of the final scoping outline as well.
But it is a summary, it's not the actual comments.
That's my understanding, but we'd want to confirm that with secret counsel just to make sure that I'm not misstating something, but it's part of the secret process. And to the extent the town board wanted to see more, we obviously could do whatever the town board prefers to get those comments in a way that's digestible, not only for you, but the community itself.
Okay.
And I think we received over 500 comments during that period, which is pretty remarkable. I think the secret consultant said they'd never seen that level of a response as part of a secret scope.
That's correct, Peter. It was over 500 comments. Not all of them dealt with the PPR, of course. But from my understanding of what the consultants have said, it's the most they've ever seen for a draft scope, which just shows that the community's taken the engagement seriously and the town board's taken it seriously. So,
yeah, I think it's great that we had that much involvement from the community in the process all along the way to get to this point. At this point, any other comments or questions from the board? I'd like to go to the public to receive comments. Aaron, did you have a comment? If you could just state your name for the record, please.
Sure. Good afternoon. Good morning. Supervisor and members of the town board. I am Erin King Sweeney, Executive Director of the East Hampton Community Alliance. It's good to be here in person instead of watching it on a screen. EHCA was established to create awareness about the economic and life-saving importance of the East Hampton Airport. EHCA has, in good faith and without resorting to litigation, sought to foster a productive dialogue about the future of the airport between the East Hampton community and the town. At many points along this road, EHCA has been quite supportive of the town's actions. We realize that the future of aviation in East Hampton relies upon good faith and a common willingness to address the legitimate concerns of the residents. EHCA submitted comments to the town's proposed PPR regulations. None of our comments would probably be deemed controversial or even earth-shattering, and it seems that you've taken a lot of those into account. Rather, they were intended to point out areas of improvement and ways to avoid possible confusion. Lots of good questions are popping up surrounding the PPR, like when will the PPR start? Is it May 19th with the opening of JPX? I think based on the presentation just now, it seems that it's May 19th. Second, since the PPR are intended to be implemented on a trial basis, what is the process to evaluate the effectiveness of each one? Accordingly, how will the changes to the PPR be made? Will the public have any input? As you may know, the anti-airport activists are publicly urging residents to file noise complaints. They're doing this prior to the new airport even being opened and without the PPR being rolled out. This attempt by the anti-airport activists to put their finger on the scale and artificially inflate noise complaints is disingenuous at best. EHCA is gravely concerned that this premature and dishonest attempt to influence the success of JPX and the PPR regulations will doom the future of the airport in East Hampton. Throughout the town's initial presentation of the PPR regulations, the supervisor and the town's aviation council referenced the percentage of complaints that many of the proposed PPR were intended to address. It was also in the presentation this morning. While EHCA surely understands the desire to address complaints, we believe these complaints must be legitimate. As Newsday had pointed out, 40% of complaints come from just 10 households. Additionally, a significant percentage of complaints were from flyover aircraft having nothing to do with HTO. If simply the percentage of complaints is the town's barometer for success, the anti-airport activists will exploit this metric. In addition, the supervisor has frequently threatened to close the airport should the PPR prove unsuccessful. We understand what's at risk. It is for this reason that EHCA is calling for the establishment of an airport working group to transparently assess the success of the trial PPR and make recommendations going forward. We acknowledge that this working group should not serve as a political forum for a variety of interest groups to get on a soapbox and derail progress. Rather, we believe this working group should be formed within the town's framework and be subject to strict participation guidelines. The establishment of an airport working group will give all residents the necessary comfort that the future of the airport of JPX will be successful. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you very much, Erin. Jason, do we have callers on the line still?
Yes, we have one caller on the line, and I also have the ticker on the top of LTV reflecting that we are taking comments for JPX East Hampton Airport. Unmuting caller now.
Hi, good morning. This is Catherine Sly. I'm a local resident of East Hampton and a local pilot. I'm calling about the landing fees that you have proposed in your new rules. The point of landing fees is to fund the future maintenance of an airport's runways and taxiways and infrastructure. And it's universally accepted across pretty much the entire United States based on simple physics and science that aircraft that weigh less than 12,500 pounds simply do not impact an airport's infrastructure enough to warrant charging landing fees for those aircraft. So airports typically don't charge them. Small aircraft are generally defined as being under 12,500 pounds, and most medium airports do not charge planes that are under that 12,500 pound any kind of landing fees. At most, maybe minimally $1 or $2. Some airports make that cutoff a little bit lower, down to 6,000 pounds, but it is incredibly rare to have landing fees of any kind for any aircraft that's under 6,000 pounds because they simply don't have any impact on the airport's infrastructure. The town board plans on charging small, locally based aircraft landing fees that are from 900% more all the way to 9,900% more than any other airport in the country that charges a landing fee for small, locally based aircraft. Only a tiny small handful of the airports in the United States charge landing fees for small, locally based aircraft because it's incredibly rare. Because locally based aircraft already pay into the airport's operations funds by paying for tie-down fees and hangar fees and fuel fees and a bunch of other fees that they're already significantly contributing their money towards the maintenance and operation costs of the airport through other means. But the town, instead of following the industry standard of categorizing small aircraft as those weighing under 12,500 pounds or even the lower tier of 6,000 pounds, instead you've created a four categories for aircraft that are less than 12,500. This is completely unprecedented. No one has ever done this because it serves absolutely no functional purpose, particularly as it pertains to the preservation of airport infrastructure. So instead, it appears as though the town board has created this large landing fee structure for small, locally based aircraft for the sole purpose of discouraging the use of the airport by locally based aircraft and to drive off local-based pilots and local-based aviation from our community. Let's compare the new East Hampton Airport's landing fees, where a 2,000-pound, small 2,000-pound Cessna now has to pay a $20 landing fee, and a small 4,000-pound Baron, 4,500-pound Baron has to pay a $300 landing fee. For example, one of the local pilots at HTO has been a flight instructor, charter pilot, and has had an aviation-based business here in East Hampton for nearly 30 years in his Baron. He has a Beechcraft Baron. He does about 300 flights per year in his Beechcraft Baron as part of his business here in East Hampton. Pursuant to your new landing fee scheme, he'll now have to pay an additional $90,000 a year in landing fees just to keep his business here in East Hampton. And to give you an example of how outrageous these proposed landing fees are, for comparison, landing that exact same Beechcraft Baron at JFK or Newark would only cost him $75 at off-peak time and $175 at peak time. At LaGuardia, it would only cost him $150 at off-peak and $250 at peak time. But those are the huge, giant Class Bravo airports, LaGuardia, JFK, Newark. And the purpose of those airports charging such outrageously large landing fees is singularly, the entire purpose of that is to discourage small planes from using those airports. Small planes are much slower, and their max flying speed is much slower than the landing speed of a lot of the aircraft, out of the airline jets that land there. So those airports are try to discourage small planes from using their airports because it interrupts the traffic flow of the large jets that are landing there. But since those airports can't outright ban those aircraft from landing there, they use huge landing fees as a means to intentionally drive away small planes. Incredibly ironic that the East Hampton Town Board is now using the exact same tactic, but actually charging an even higher fee level for these small aircraft. So it's kind of hard to make the claim that you're not trying to drive away small planes when that's the entire purpose of using large landing fees at other airports. So finally, let's look at the other airports nearby and what the landing fees they charge. Brookhaven. Brookhaven is actually going to be joining in with East Hampton at the same concept of charging landing fees for locally based aircraft. Their landing fees are 50 cents for every 1,000 pounds. $2 for a Cessna, not 20. $3 for a Baron, not 300. Republic, landing fees there also. $2 and it used to be 40 cents, now it's 50 cents per every 1,000 pounds. Same thing. Groton, there's no landing fees whatsoever for up to 6,000 pounds, and there's an exemption for the landing of all non-revenue producing aircraft that are piloted by individuals holding private pilot certificates. Barnstable, Hyannis, again, no landing fees whatsoever for aircraft under 6,000 pounds. Now keep in mind that all these airports have a lot more operations than HTO ever has. Republic has 190,000. Barnstable has 80,000. Brookhaven has 65,000. Groton has 60,000. Smaller airports have never charged these kinds of landing fees. They've certainly never charged landing fees that are greater than JFK, LaGuardia, Newark. So I'd like the town board to tell us, again, how they're not trying to drive off small planes and local small aviation business operators from this airport. Local pilots are okay with having to pay some kind of reasonable fee. $2, $3, just like is done at every other airport in the country. But $300 per flight? Tell us again how you're not trying to drive away small local aviation. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Jason, do we have any other callers on the line?
Yes, we do. Unmuting now. Hello, caller ending 2617. You're on the air. Hello.
Hi, good morning. This is John Corain from over in Sag Harbor. I'd like to start by once again thanking the town board for their diligence and hard work in trying to solve a very, very difficult and complex problem. As the season starts, as I've said in the past, I'm trying to be optimistic that the restrictions you're putting in place will have a significant impact on the quality of life for your neighbors here, primarily to the west of East Hampton Town. Those of us in Southampton Town, Southold Town, Riverhead Town. I would ask you to please give consideration to not only the volumes, but the flights. I know you don't like to get into routes, but I think many of us who live to the west of you are concerned that we will once again, if I could use the term, redlined, that the path of entry is going to be heavied up over, Shinnecock, Robbins Island, coming in over North Sea, coming in over Noyak, coming in over Bridgehampton, and those communities that don't own or control the airport. So that's one comment I'd like to make for your consideration, and as a part of watching this, is where are those flights coming in? I wasn't even going to call in today, but I was listening to the first caller, who I believe is not a local resident, who I believe really doesn't have skin in the game other than, if I understand it correctly, maybe compensated for her work. and had the audacity to start to ask you to discount the complaints that will continue to come in. For those of us who have been complaining for 10 years, we know, or more, we know that our complaints are the tip of the iceberg, that we speak on behalf of many of our neighbors who don't have the inclination to either call in or purchase the button or go to a website, because as I'm sure you can all appreciate, that's a taxing effort to do that, and people have grown wary of it. So in spite of what the earlier caller said, somewhat disrespectfully, I feel, that dismissing the concentration of complaints to what she would label as a small minority of residents, I think what your public hearings demonstrated was that there is a general outcry from many on the east end of Long Island, and not just the east end of Long Island, but going all the way back to New York City and Manhattan and Queens, who is tormented by the air traffic that's over Long Island. Much of it has to do, not exclusively with East Hampton Airport, but much of it particularly on the holiday weekends and peak time when people are trying to enjoy their homes. So I throw that in. It wasn't really what I was planning to say today, but it was based on what the earlier first comment was. The other thing I'd just like clarification on, I don't know if you can get into it today, but it would be good to hear what the plans are for fuel sales and fuel storage. Given that we all drink out of the same aquifer, it's a little daunting to think that, God forbid, if there was some accident with the fuel out there, what it would do to the water supply. And we do know that the airport is over a very deep aquifer, and we also know, regardless of whether we have private wells or get our money from our water from Suffolk County water, it's all coming out of the same aquifer. So that is one thing I would ask you to consider in future meetings. If you have it today, it would be great to know, if the consultants know that it's part of the initial work, is what is the future of the fuel storage and fuel sales there. Because hopefully, as the volume is going to go down of flights in and out, that the need for that kind of storage will mirror the decline in the volumes. So again, just want to end with thank you. I see the clock is running out of me. Thank you all very much for your hard work on this. It's appreciated by your neighbors far and wide.
Thanks for taking the time to call today, John.
Okay,
Jason, do we have any?
Yep.
Next caller, please.
Hello, caller ending 2650. You are on the air.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I'm a little confused with this whole. I'm on myself. I have to unmute myself.
No, you don't have to unmute yourself. We take care of that on our end. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
And you just state your name to the board, and please start your discussion. You're on live.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, the name is Lorraine Hayes. I'm a resident of East Hampton for many, many years. A few things I'd like to ask. I quickly read over the regulations, and I see that it's the airport manager who's going to control pretty much all of this. Is that correct?
There'll be some discretion on the airport manager's part with regard to touch and goes and some other operations. He does have some authority under the legislation.
Yes, I see originally the touch and goes and all of those others was banned, and now it's no longer banned. It's going to be up to the airport manager to decide whether that would be allowed or not allowed. So I guess that's a change that was made from the prior provisions that were put in. I read that if there's a violation, it has to be self-reported. So the party who's violating the restrictions has to report their violation. Am I correct in that, or am I off base?
No, I don't think so. The violations are recorded by tail number and would be reviewed by our vector system.
Because what I'm reading, it says it has to be any violation with accidental must be reported to the airport director. So I didn't quite understand what that meant.
That might be if they spilled fuel or something like that, something of that nature. They're required to report it.
So
Is there a,
Okay, so
is,
this
can you
wasn't
give me a
automatic
page
system.
number? Yeah, can you give me a page
Oh,
number as to where
I'm
you're
on
reading that?
page 5. Page 5, mandatory self-reporting.
Mm-hmm.
Any violation of these rules must be reported to the airport director.
Can check with Andrew, but I think it's kind of consistent with some FAA regulations on pilots too, that require them to self-report violations.
Yeah, so that
So
really
if they're
would be any
aware, so if
violation.
right, so if they're aware of that they violated something, they're supposed to self-report, but we also will be monitoring.
Yeah.
So we're not relying solely on their self-reporting.
Yeah, I would think that would be a little bit, watching the hen house, putting the clerks in charge of the hen house for self-reporting on that report.
Did you have any other questions, Lorraine, or comments?
Yeah, real quickly, I'm sorry to take your time. I know you're presenting numbers as far as percentages of flights and the amount that will impact as far as complaints. Is there any mathematical analysis for this? There's percentages. Is there any way of anyone having some kind of a mathematical numbers to verify these assumptions that are being made?
Yeah, those were based on our historic data over the last 5 years, I believe. And so based on the number of operations and the types of complaints, and again, part of the exercise here is to actually implement rules and regulations, and then to monitor in real time what the impacts of that is, because you can speculate all you want, but until you actually make changes, it's impossible to know. Yeah, it's impossible to know with certainty, but based on the data that we collected and examined, we believe that a 40% reduction in the volume of aircraft is possible, and as much as 70% of the complaints would be addressed by the changes that we're proposing.
Well, I hope you're right, because when I see it 13% of flights overall, it would reduce it to still 30,000 flights approximately. So I hope your numbers are correct, because a 70% reduction and 40% would be obviously a step in the right direction. I don't see how it's going to be possible, but I will be cautiously optimistic, I guess, is what I'm saying. Thank you very much for listening.
Sure. Thank you for calling, Lorraine. Okay. Chase, do we have any other callers?
Yes, we have at least 3 other callers on the line, and I will unmute the next one up right now. Hello, caller ending 0362. You're on the air.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much. My name is Cynthia McGowan, and I live in the Noyak, Sag Harbor area. And I wasn't going to call in, but Catherine caught my attention, and all I could think of is, are we being heard? Because the ire from New Jersey, Queens, all up the island is on you guys. And I was sitting in my living room this weekend watching a large jet making a U-turn over the Mulva Hill Sanctuary. And I'm tired of calling in. How much more are we supposed to call and complain and fear? Because I called the police the other day when I saw the jet, and of course they can't do anything, but are we being heard? How much more do we have to call in? I'm late to the meeting, so I could be missing something, but I don't know how someone like Catherine asking or talking about fuel prices, and it was just ridiculous. And most of the towns have no sympathy for that because it is the few, as we all know, that are wreaking havoc on our lives, our health, and also our property values are being affected. And I just want to know, are we being heard, and how much more do we have to complain, because it's running people away, and it's a shame that we can't enjoy our homes just because of some few selfish people. So please tell me that we're being heard.
Well, Cynthia, we certainly are hearing you, and we're hearing from others on all aspects of the airport. And again, our proposed prior permission required regulations, we believe, will have a significant impact, and we're going to study the actual impact of what we're proposing, and we can make adjustments in order to get to the right balance.
How about adjustments on flight paths? Because I see planes flying very low to Sag Harbor area all the time, over the Mulva Hill Preserve, where we have bald eagles nesting and many other birds. And I'm just sick of hearing helicopters coming in from probably North Sea. And I'm talking about the waterbed. They reverberate, and it's going to cause health problems for people. And I'm tired of being ridiculed by the other side. They have no respect. What are we getting? We are getting nothing back. Nothing back so far. So,
Cynthia, I
anyway,
appreciate you
that's all
taking
I have to say.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to
You
call
can
us today.
see, can you hear my, and I just want you to appreciate that. Can you hear the emotion in my voice? Because I am not alone, and we are sick of it. We are sick of it. The other side has been so selfish, and we don't get anything back. So I'm sorry. Thank you. I won't go
We
on.
hear you. Thank you. Thank you for
so
calling.
much.
Jason, do we have any other callers online?
Yes, we do, and I shall unmute the next caller right now. Hello, caller ending 5172. You're on the air.
Hi, good afternoon, Town Board. My name is Gary Herman, local pilot. I was hoping you could answer the questions that Catherine Sly proposed earlier in regard to the landing fees, how that's not going to impact local pilots, and what the basis was to increase fees from, say, $30 for our twin-engine Baron up to $300.
So, Gary, the purpose of public comment is to take comments. If you want to weigh on your opinion of the landing fees, we're happy to hear that. And then beyond, I will just make. Excuse me. If I could just. Excuse me. If you'll just let me talk.
Thank you.
Are you done talking, Gary? And I will make one comment. One comment is that all of the comparisons made by a previous caller, I believe they're all grant-assured airports, and they accept FAA funding. So part of balancing the airport is to make sure that it can be sustainable, and that requires us to adjust landing fees. Landing fees are subject to change, and doesn't require a town board hearing to change them. If you have specific comments or recommendations about what they should be, we're happy to hear them from you.
I appreciate that, Mr. Supervisor. So has the town actually run a financial model to understand how these high fees will impact the airport and how you're going to actually be able to operate the airport? Did you have any input from the local pilot community or the aviation community?
So we have been running the airport for a number of years, and so we, I think, have a pretty good handle on the expenses. What we don't know for sure, and we'll have to be studying this and maybe make some adjustments as we go along, is what the impact will be on the volume and the total revenues based on what we implement in terms of restrictions. So it's a somewhat fluid situation. And again, we'll likely be making some changes as we move along.
Well, it seems a little too fluid, and I hope you'll be able to reach out to the local aviation community, who seems that they will be significantly and adversely affected by what you're proposing right now.
We appreciate you taking the time to let us know.
I have more question, Mr. Supervisor. Thank you. I noticed last week the town allocated $1.5 million to the Cooley Law Firm for various legal actions. Where are those funds coming from? Is that from the airport fund or from the town's general operating budget?
They come from the airport fund, as they are airport-related expenses.
But they're not all airport-related expenses. For example, the Superfund litigation has nothing to do with the operations of the airport.
They're not doing that.
They're not doing that. They're not handling that case.
All these funds have been coming out of the airport fund and not the town's operating budget.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear what you said.
So you're stating today that all the funds that are being spent on legal third-party consultants today are coming from the airport fund and not the town's general operating budget.
All related airport expenses are paid out of the airport fund. I think I made that clear.
Well, that's not exactly what I asked. So are you paying third-party consultants from the airport fund?
If they're doing airport work.
So you're stating then that anything related to the airport litigation and your is coming out of the airport fund and not the town's operating budget?
That's correct.
Okay. One last question. If 80% of the town's residents and 77% of the village residents want the airport kept open as a fully functional airport, why has the town taken it upon itself, and you and the 4 other members of this board, to really take actions which seem as though they are going to significantly impact and drive away local aviation interests?
Well,
contrary to what the 80% of the people would like to see going forward, which is a fully operational airport.
I believe we're achieving that, having a fully operational airport as it opens as new privately
but it's not going
run.
to be fully. I'm not going to.
I don't intend or care to debate the matter with you, Mr. Herman. If you have specific recommendations or comments, I'm happy to take them, but I'm afraid your 3 minutes is now up.
Well, I appreciate the time, Mr. Supervisor, and the other town members. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks for calling.
And unmuting next caller. Hello, caller ending 4221. You're on the air. Hello.
Thank you. Good morning. It's Jane Mearing in Amagansett. First, just 2 quick preambles. First of all, I'd like to thank Councilman Overby for raising the notion, or the idea of having the comments, which was great, 500 comments, somehow made sort of publicly available for people to see. Obviously, to protect identities, but it would be really interesting to be able to, rather than have them summarized, to be able to see those. So thank you for stressing that. And then secondly, maybe I'm stating the obvious, but painting everyone who has something to say about reining in the airport, painting them as anti-airport activists, as if we're all some sort of radicals, I think is not justified to people's good faith to try and solve a problem. The meat of just what I want to say quickly has to do with using complaint numbers as sort of a key metric for making decisions. Don't get me wrong, complaints should continue to be counted and analyzed, but I don't think the number of complaints can be used as really a primary or meaningful evaluation metric in this scoping study or as the basis of decision making. Complaint levels can be manipulated, especially if people know it's important in the scoping period. I mean, I can see this sort of mutually assured destruction of, Montauk versus East Hampton, trying to escalate. But we know that many people are seriously bothered by the level of air traffic, but don't choose to or are not able to send in complaints each time they're hearing something. You know, the age-old question, if a tree falls and there's no one there to hear it or complain about it, does it make a sound? And the answer is yes. When planes fly over or helicopters fly, they are disruptive. Aircraft sound is de facto and inherently detrimental to the quality of life and the rural character in East Hampton, and that rural character the board has the duty to protect. So I don't think at this point it's any more a matter of who reports or how many formal complaints. Silence and the ability to hear and appreciate ambient noise is not a luxury, it's a necessity. So just what I'd like to ask is, rather than complaints, that a full data set needs to be compiled and perhaps reported as real time as possible during this assessment period, and that data being sort of fully transparent to the public, that tracks and analyzes in full which aircraft fly where, when, and at what altitude, what routes, all that type of stuff, so we can really all see that and compare it to the history. And just one more metric, I know you're going to want to answer questions, but I didn't hear it come up. Is any part of this scoping also tracking the occupancy, sorry, not the right word, or how many passengers are on planes relative to their capacity? Because I do think one of the issues is, we have had planes flying in where, sort of legendary, one person steps off, and I think that starts to get to the carbon footprint issues. So that's all for me today. Thank you for continuing to work on this difficult issue.
Thanks, Jane. And we don't rely solely on complaint data. I think, that's important for folks to understand.
Yes, I just wanted to stress it because originally when you first presented it, it had sort of come up as sort of one of the key metrics. So I just wanted to discuss that again, but I know it's multifaceted. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason, do we have any other callers?
We don't have any more new callers. Catherine Sly did leave, and then she called back in again. That's our only other caller.
I think at this point, does the board want to hear from Catherine again?
And we also have one William Hayes still on the line, but I think he may be listening in. If you want me to unmute him, you can make those choices.
Is that Lorraine?
Lorraine is weird.
Yeah, we heard from Lorraine.
Yeah, we already heard
It's the same phone call. So at this point, I think we'll move on to our resolutions and liaison reports, having given the public an opportunity to comment today.
I'll start. How's that sound?
Good. Sounds like a plan.
Okay. So last week I had a couple meetings. The Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee continued to meet to review their RFA applications and discuss some upcoming matters about funding and long-term larger projects. I would anticipate that they are going to be on our schedule in the next couple of weeks with some of their recommendations to the town board. We also met about the 395 Panago Affordable Housing Working Project met. I will actually have on a resolution, thank you, Carol, for hiring an engineer for this project. We discussed the design of the project, specifically design restrictions that might go onto the project, where we might look at a maximum GFA, accessory structures, the type of 99-year lease, site designs that still will make the project and the homes recapturable and affordable in perpetuity. I look forward to coming to the board potentially in late May with this discussion on how this project's moving forward, some of the designs, justifications. The group's been working really hard at it then too, and still overall, I think we're on track to potentially get a shovel in the ground by year's end or very early 2023. After we discuss it with the town board, we'll then bring it to the planning board for review. I sat in a meeting with the SLIPS committee, which we were discussing many of the issues with our commercial docks and such. We were discussing our project that's about to be undertaken at the at the Star Island commercial docks, and about how we're going to do outreach to some of the SLIP owners that are there to be knowledgeable that the projects are going to be undergoing, what they can do, and how long they might have to find a different berth. Also about removal of the gear that's in the Star Island parking lot during construction, because we're going to need that area for a large amount of staging of equipment. We also discussed moving that the Westlake Comfort Station, which is moving forward, that the board wants to move forward with fishing gear storage in that area behind there, and how we can allocate fishing gear storage to qualified or vetted commercial fishing industry, and how we can potentially charge for it and make sure that we have a bond and deposit for that area then too. And they gave some recommendations to that also. And also looking at, does that happen in that one area, but also all the other areas that commercial fishing gear is stored then too. We discussed where we are in the head of the harbor as far as recreational dock space, which is completely full for the year, and they're going to be going. They have a couple spaces that they're going off of the wait list, and that there still is a large need for recreational dock space right now in the town of East Hampton that we're hearing. This leads us into a discussion that we might have to bring back a potential dock manager position that would be an individual that would take care of all of the authorizations for leases, licenses for recreational and commercial slips, and then also for the rules and regulations on these slips as they go. I took another meeting. I sat in another meeting with members of Natural Resources, also the Georgia Association, Friends of George Capond, about the Route 27 rest stop in Waynescott. They had a meeting on Friday with their design team, just to get some of the preliminary design constraints that are in that area. It was a nice meeting. They're going to take that back and start working on some overall plans that we would like to see in that area, talking about bioswales, pavement details, and also access to the pond then too. I want to let everyone know that we did receive the town's beach operating permits from Suffolk County Department of Health Services for calendar year 2022, which is great news. They are pretty much back on par pre-COVID. As you remember, in the last 2 years, our beach operating permits were amended and changed so that we met with the state's executive guidance on there. We are still looking for lifeguards for the season, part-time staff, and please don't forget that the town has wonderful opportunities as far as competitive jobs in many of our departments. Please contact our Human Resource Department at 324-4141 for a listing of those jobs of competitive pay scale, great benefits, and a nice working environment. We are working on beach parking rows. I don't know if you discussed that in the CAC in Waynescott. Right-of-way parking that might be able to increase beach parking anywhere from Waynescott to Napeague, out into Montauk also. I'll have some more information for you in May when it comes to that. And our beach operating plan committee and plans are going to be meeting very shortly. Shortly after I return, I want to let the board know and the general public know I'll be away until the 25th. I'll do my best to keep up with emails if I can. But if not, I'll get back to everyone when I return on the 26th. Thank you very much. That's what I have.
Thanks, David. Sylvia?
Sure. I want to start, it's been a couple of weeks, so I'm going to start with the Waynescott Tree Society that met on the 24th of March. They were happy to support the new clearing legislation requiring physical staking of clearing boundaries and a survey before a building permit is issued. They would like the board to consider requiring trees of a certain size, trunk diameter, outside of the restricted clearing areas might be required, or try their best to retain those larger trees on the property, even though they're outside the clearing boundaries. They'd like the town board to consider adding trees and vegetation to other parts of the property when clearing for Stephen Hand's Path for the ball fields.
That is in the design.
Okay, yep. And on April 29th is Arbor Day. They are planning to plant a tree at the Waynescott Green. I sent a letter to the town board from them, and thank you, David, for responding that you support that. And and I will clear it also with Scott Wilson that the location is at the appropriate location. It's going to be a dogwood. There was also a dogwood planted for Rick Del Mastro, so this is the second time we've put in a dogwood at that green. The Waynescott CAC met on Saturday, April the 2nd. Director of Planning Jeremy Samuelson was the guest speaker. He spoke about the role of the planning department in applications. He's working toward what he considered a more consolidated approach, making sure that all the boards, ZBA, planning, and ARB are interconnected in a better way. He thought that would help as applications move forward, because some applications need requirements from either one, two, or all three boards, depending on the application. So he's trying to interconnect all of those so it's smoother for the applicant. He'd like to see more proactive future planning, but understands that the priorities now for the town are affordable housing and coastal policies as sea level rise happens. He reminded the committee that East Hampton has over 100 miles of shoreline. In response to questions and concerns, Jeremy stated that he understands and will be looking at the code for lot size versus house size and giving the town board some recommendations. My favorite line that Jeremy talked about in talking with an applicant was the applicant wanted to, can't we move the woods to this side of the property instead of that side? So he thought there was a clear misunderstanding of the impact of our local woods means. Members said generally that code enforcement is a big part of keeping the community character. Again, I'm going to thank David Lees for putting together those beach parking plans. He put together four, I think at least four for Beach Lane. And so those all have been given to their subcommittee on beach parking, and on May 1st is their next meeting. So they'll get back to us which ones they like the best or what they see as the best for safety issues, and maybe increasing some of the number of parking that are there.
My pleasure.
They're also a bit worried about drainage on Beach Lane, particularly in that parking lot at the end of Beach Lane. It gets very high, dangerous to walk through, and the edge of the roads are starting to crumble. I've tried to reach out to Steve Lynch. I know this is a really busy time of year for him, so hopefully he'll get back to me on some issues on how we can solve some of those problems. There are a couple of questions about airport, and I brought that up today. The Waynescott CAC would also like to maybe see just the comments. They don't need to see the people, they just need to see the actual comments. There were several folks that asked for that. And they also wanted to know in complaints if the people that are actually complaining, if those names are given out. You don't think, I did not ask Jim Brundage that question yet.
No, I don't believe
it's
as
just
practice the people who complain about aircrafts names are given
okay.
out.
So we'll leave it at that. The business committee actually met two different times, and I'm going to give these numbers, and this is March 30th numbers for the Southampton Hospital and Stony Brook Hospital, and April 7th numbers. So, and I'm not sure if Peter had those same numbers that the other.
I have our testing numbers.
Okay, so I'm just going to give the hospitalization numbers, not the testing. On March 30th, Southampton Hospital had 3 COVID patients, Stony Brook had 17, and Eastern Long Island had 1. By April 7th, Southampton Hospital had 1 patient, Stony Brook was down to 15, and Eastern Long Island had 0. So just keep those numbers in mind. I know there is still concern about COVID, as there should be. There was also a public hearing last Thursday on the outdoor dining program and the pilot program, and they understand that there was only one comment from a speaker about that. An application is needed for that program, and that's forthcoming. Jeremy and Eric Shantz and the planning department, I've seen a draft of it, but not the final, so I will send that to the town board as soon as I get that. The Waynescott Working Group also met. This is the group that's working with the Wayne-Scott Hamlet study. It was a 2-hour meeting, but I kind of try to boil it down to 3 issues that I think were consensus building around. One is to conduct a speed study to lower the speed limit to 30 miles an hour. It's higher going through that part, and they feel that if we lower the speed limit, that will also help businesses and make it feel much more like a village instead of just a pass-through. They embraced streetscapes with trees, landscaping, adding that to that area of town, and sidewalks. There are sidewalks there, but make them ADA compliant. They need to be a foot wider. They'd also like to see if the lines could be buried if possible. We looked at both Amagansett that has overhead lines and also the village that doesn't. So hopefully they'll figure out that either way it goes, we can still enhance the streetscape that's in Wayne-Scott. They'd also, the third point was to look for a municipal parking lot site or structure some easements over some already existing parking as a strategy to work towards what they think is not enough parking in the area. So the Arts Council also met, and I just want to report that March Madness at the high school, it was the 6th annual class panel contest. The town provides the 4x4 panels. Thank Tony Littman and his crew for putting that together and priming all those panels. And I didn't realize that we'd done it 6 years in a row. It would have been 7th if we had March Madness last year. Thank Heather Evans at the high school, the art teacher, Teresa Lawler, who's also on our committee. They really worked very hard in making sure that this happened again. We had art council members as judges. And I can report that the 11th grade won the contest, and the 12th grade came in 2nd, 10th grade came in 3rd, and 9th grade 4th. But I have to say, all of them were spectacular and creative, and they will all be hung in the high school in the quarters. So I do have some photos from the event, and I'll give those to Joanne Pilgrim to post on some social media.
Great.
And the Police Reform Committee also met, and I'm going to let the supervisor, both you and I were on that call. So if you want to bring the committee, bring the board up to date. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Sylvia. Kate?
Yes, Peter, I met again with the Coastal Assessment and Resiliency Planning Committee. And before I talk about the importance of that and keep bringing that to the forefront for the board and the public, I just would like to make note for everyone that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has delivered their 6th assessment report. And just a few notes on that regarding the North American section. It's noted that since the assessment report, the last one, the 5th, climate change impacts have become more frequent, intense, and have affected many millions of people from every region and sector across North America. Accelerating climate change hazards pose significant risks to the well-being of North American populations and the natural, managed, and human systems on which they depend. Addressing these risks have been made more urgent by delays due to misinformation about climate science that has sowed uncertainty and impeded recognition of risk. So without limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, key risks to North America are expected to intensify rapidly by mid-century, and we are at 2022. There's a high confidence in that. So one of the recommendations of the 6th assessment is near and long-term adaptation planning, implementation, and coordination across sectors and jurisdictions, which supports equitable and effective climate solutions. And that leads me into the importance of our CARP plan, which is a recognition of the long-term effects of coastal flooding and shoreline erosion, and the long-term effects of climate change, including sea level, which will increase the coastal risks. The CARP plan identifies key coastal risks in order of priority. Priority 1 is shoreline erosion. Priority 2 is vulnerable transportation systems, and we touched upon that earlier. Priority 3 is the long-term sustainability of certain town-focused areas due to high coastal risk. And 4 is the future residential and commercial property damage. And in the future, we're finalizing the draft that we've been working on that the town board commissioned fortuitously a few years ago. And we're working towards a presentation to the town board and adoption so that we can start implementation.
Thank you, Kate. So just a brief update on COVID news. The local testing numbers at our Stephen Hands Path site have bumped up. There's an uptick of the 37 tests. We had 3 positives, which equals 8.11% positivity rate. I mean, it is a small sample size, but there has been a general, I think, uptick across the Northeast, the most recent variant. So, it's probably prudent to, if you're in large person settings, to maybe still consider wearing masks indoors, and to, avoid those kind of situations so that we don't see further increase in the number of cases. For those who are eligible for a 4th booster, which is anyone over 50 years of age, who has been at least 4 months or more since their last dose, or 12 and older who are moderately or severely immunocompromised, and again, at least 4 months from their last booster can receive a booster shot. Southampton Hospital has only Pfizer available at this time, and as of this Wednesday, they have a 12 to 6 p.m. Vaccination clinic, which you can schedule an appointment for online. And every Wednesday after that, from 10 to 6 p.m., they'll be offering those boosters. The Police Reform Committee met, as Sylvia said, and we discussed the process of handling complaints against the police. There is an online form. You can go to East Hampton Police website and very easily find that form. It's a very simple form. You can file a complaint, either listing your name or anonymously and give a description. This past year, the chief's just completed the year-end stats, and he'll be making a presentation at an upcoming work session. There were only 3 complaints filed with the department, and I think that, shows that we have an exemplary police department and very concerned with community policing, and many of the standards that had been required under the Police Reform Act from the state that the town had already implemented, and we've made some additional changes as a result of that legislation. The spring training session is nearly complete, where officers get updated training. There's another session that'll start in the fall, but there was also the state accreditation this past week, which the department received unanimous support and accreditation, again, earning extremely high marks for the very proactive nature of the department's efforts. We know that we have more to do with addressing concerns within the community about policing. There are a lot of misconceptions about stops and whatnot, and so as part of an effort to help improve and community's understanding and relations with our police department, the chief is hoping to start a citizens police academy again in the near future. Also, some of the additional things that were identified, such as body cams, will be coming online in the future. The existing dash cams that we have, which I think we had, the video cameras before most other departments, are starting to reach the end of their useful life. And so the chief would like to combine those updates with the addition of body cams in the upcoming budget. Was there anything else on the police reform?
I want to say that Chief Sarlo, the genuine feeling that he has for this community and making sure that the officers are appropriately trained and, listen to the community and listen to folks that, even talking about the folks that might complain, that they understand the reasonings for everything that the police department does. And I just, he's just very impressive. And particularly that day that we were talking to him, I thought he really wants to make sure that, policing here is a community effort, that we all try to work at this together.
Yeah, he's very passionate about that. So
Yeah.
We're lucky to
Came
have him.
across, I thought, really nicely, as it always does with him, but it was really great.
So I had an opportunity to participate in a panel discussion on affordable housing sponsored by the Express News Group at the clubhouse recently and last Thursday. And that was very well attended forum, very informative. I think it was a good opportunity for the public to understand, what efforts the town has undertaken to address affordable housing. Declared in January as part of my State of the Town address was all hands on housing. And as each of you know, you each have an area that you're concentrating on to help address the crisis. And my area was to put together housing plan committee for use of the 0.5% transfer tax should it pass at the November referendum, and to put that plan together and circulate in the community to make the community aware of how we might use those funds. Again, that 0.5% transfer tax will be on the ballot in November. It would function very much like the Community Preservation Fund, where upon the sale of a property, the purchaser pays into the fund to help us address affordable housing. The eligibility of use of those funds is being discussed, will be part of the plan. The general consensus of the committee was that we should keep that as broad as possible and as flexible as possible to address changes in the housing market. But it would certainly include the ability to purchase properties, to develop projects, to give down payment assistance or purchase assistance in the forms of grants or loans, et cetera. And the committee decided to have two subcommittees, one that would focus directly on drafting the legislation to have that ready for a public hearing in June. And the other group is working on really messaging and working to make the public aware of what the plan would entail. So it's bifurcating the committee to some degree. I had a meeting yesterday with Eleanor Whitmore Early Childhood Development Center, Joan Overlock, and Tim Frazier, just getting an update on their efforts. As you all know, we have been making grants to that organization as part of our annual budget for a number of years, and we increased that during COVID as there were a number of challenges that they and other organizations that we've helped fund faced. They're very thankful and appreciative of that money that the town gives. Some people don't realize that the Childhood Development Center was formerly the East Hampton Daycare. It's really the same organization that's gone through a number of changes.
I went there.
Been in place since 1969. See the great work that they do over there. And so, they have a number of other partnerships within the community, whether it's the East Hampton Library, where they're bringing the children in and giving them these 3 and 4 year olds their own library cards, and that they can check out books and again, encouraging reading at an early age. The first 5 years of a child's life are most important in terms of brain development. And we need to continue to make large investments in this category, especially because it pays huge dividends and saves us a lot of money with corrective issues later on. 65% of their over 100 daily students live below the poverty line. And so they have in the past run, and again, they partner with Springs Food Pantry to provide a food pantry on a bi-weekly basis. Again, trying to help working families and to ensure that, no child goes hungry. These kids get 2 meals a day, which is important. They are in the process of working through national accreditation, and they're interested in also, expanding. And I've invited them to come and give a presentation at a future board meeting so the public can really understand the very important work that they're doing and what kind of impact that really has on the community. So I know we've been all very supportive. We encourage the community at large to help support them as well. I had an update meeting with Peter Scully, who's the Deputy Executive Suffolk County, as well as Sarah Lansdale, who's the Director of Planning, Dorian Dale, who's part of the Sustainability in Ken Sagal, on wastewater. Since 2014, the county has been pursuing the Reclaim Our Water initiative that Steve Ballone had put forward, the county exec. And as part of that process was, been working to certify low nitrogen systems and to convert existing cesspool and septic tank situations into much greener, more sustainable, low nitrogen, innovative. So it was an update basically of how they're doing and how they want to plan for the future. The county's interested in identifying a revenue source, a constant revenue source that would help leverage federal dollars as well as provide consistent grant funding for this effort. Over 380,000 septic systems in Suffolk County. I think we probably lead the county in terms of systems per capita installed so far. We're looking to ramp our efforts up, and we've seen over the last 3 years considerable uptick in the number of voluntary upgrades. And of course, we're the first municipality to require upgraded systems, the new IA systems, upon major renovation or new construction. The science is clear. There's substantive, changes in the amount of nitrogen dispersed by these upgraded systems. It's much less. The two systems that seem to have risen to the top in terms of nitrogen reduction are the Fuji Clean and Hydro Action. And those two brands have, I think, because of their effectiveness, have attracted more interest within the market. And so we see now about 70% of all those systems being installed are made by those two manufacturers. So, we have a lot more to do on the topic. And, the other, I think, thing to note is that the county had been conducting a countywide watershed plan to identify nitrogen loading within all the different watersheds within, the county. The town had undertaken its own efforts, and so that complements the work by the county. But that helps us sort of focus and prioritize which areas are most important to be making these changes. The lowest travel times, 0 to 2 years to surface water bodies, obviously is top priority. All around of our ponds, Georgia Pond, which has seen significant increase in number of residents putting in those systems. Fort Pond, all of any surface water body does receive some impairment from that, and we have also a huge legacy of nitrogen that's already in the ground that is making its way either towards the aquifer or towards surface waters. So we may be only seeing the tip of the iceberg at this point, and we can have the most immediate impact, I think, because we're seeing the balance has just shifted. Nitrogen's important in the environment, necessary for plant growth, but if you get too much, then you get algal blooms. The other calculation that people don't consider is that there's atmospheric deposition of nitrogen. That represents about 40% of all the nitrogen. So, not burning fossil fuels will also aid in reductions in nitrogen from that source. But if we can just, reduce it enough to get the balance tipped back in the favor of the local ecosystems, that's really important. The Amagansett at CAC met last night, and they had continued interest in the town's LED street lighting upgrades, which we've partnered with New York Power Authority to. First step is to map out, create a complete inventory map. We have roughly 729 streetlights within the township, and many of those are not LED, and so we would be looking to upgrade those to LED, which reduces electric consumption and by extension, the burning of fossil fuels to generate the electricity necessary. Not to mention that it saves a lot of dollars. Municipal buildings within East Hampton, we're saving, I think, over $120,000 annually on electric costs due to the LED upgrades in this building and all other municipal buildings. And we need to continue doing that. They're interested in having within the historic district and the Hamlet Center, changing out the existing Cobra overhead lights on poles to what we see here outside Town Hall or in downtown Montauk or the villages of Sag Harbor and East Hampton, cast iron historic lamppost style lighting to go along the sidewalks and in the area. Certainly would be in keeping with the historic nature of Amagansett and would provide much better consistent lighting for the area. Currently, those Cobra lights are tucked up in between large mature deciduous trees. So in the summertime, there end up being, bright and shady spots at night, which really can cause some safety concerns. They're very interested in participating in a discussion about changing out those lights and the possible creation of a lighting district expansion to include those lights upgrades. And there was also some brief discussion about burying the lines within Amagansett, which has obvious benefits in terms of reliability during storms, and also, to be able to allow your village trees or hamlet trees to grow without being butchered around the power lines, because generally they grow in the same right of way that power lines would be existing. So there was interest in that. It's something that, we can work with the planning department to identify how many potential property owners might be included in that district, what the costs would be, and how that would be spread over, I think, 30 years, probable use of that and amortized. So they also had a brief discussion about 555, and there was some comments about how vehicles are using that property without restriction and driving all over the property. And my recollection was that we had limited vehicles to certain areas and as part of the management plan. So we either need to put some barriers up or some signage, additional signage.
We actually have to bring a management plan back because we haven't adopted it yet.
Yeah.
So we should get back to that. I think that would be important to sort of designate areas where driving is allowed and not allowed, so that it doesn't interfere with other activities, walkers, joggers, what have you. Let's see. There was also a request for highway department to take a look at that area west of the tracks over near Old Stone Highway and Abraham's Landing Road. Apparently the potholes have gotten really bad in that section. I didn't get a chance to look at it myself, but that might be something to look at. And I think that is it for my views and report. So we have a few resolutions to offer.
Would you like me to start?
Yes, Kate, I think you have the first one.
Yes, I do. 2022-498 is an approval for Natural Resources Department members to attend the Coastal Policy and Climate Change Seminar. And this is to approve Kim Shaw, who's the director, Mark Abramson, the assistant director, and Melissa Winslow, the senior environmental advisor, to attend the Coastal Policy and Climate Change Seminar on April 28th, entitled The Rising Tide, Montauk 2042, A Changing Landscape at Island's End. And it was resolved that Kim Shaw, Mark Abramson, and Melissa Winslow are authorized to attend, and that a town vehicle can be used for transportation, and all registration fees will be paid using the town credit card or as per town credit card policy.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. Resolution ID 27630 is to amend Resolution 2021-1292 Wainscott Water Main Connections per DEC consent order.
We actually have
There's a resolution number.
resolution number 499.
I got the wrong.
Here, I'll give this to you.
Most recent one. So yeah, Resolution 499, amend Resolution 2021-1292 Wainscott Water Main Connections per New York State DEC consent order. And the total amount is for $144,527.62.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. Resolution 500 is retain Savick and Murray for airport survey work at a cost not to exceed $11,100.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. 2022-501, amend resolution number 2022-475, continue retention of outside counsel, South Fork Wind LLC, Duncan, Weinberg, Genzer, and Pembroke, 2022. And that would be for, let's see, of counsel, $435 an hour, other principals, $390 per hour, senior associates, $320 per hour, other associates, $280, non-attorney professionals, $220, senior paralegals, $190, and paralegal law clerks at $175.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed carried. Resolution 502 is to accept proposal for professional services for engineering at 395 Pantago Road. That's resolved that Drew Bennett, consulting engineer, shall be paid at a rate of $180 per hour, principal engineer, $120 per hour, project engineer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. 503 is a budget modification of town attorney that is moving from other/contingency in the amount of $120,000 to miscellaneous payments in the same amount.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. 504 is to amend resolution 2022-182, retain FPM environmental engineers, and resolve that resolution 2022-182 is hereby amended to provide that payment to the consultant shall be made from budget account outside professional, and in all other respects confirmed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried. We do have some items to discuss in exec session.
So I make a motion, we go into exec session for personnel, leases, and advice of counsel. I don't see CPF on here.
CPF's on there. We do have.
We are, and CPF.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed and carried.
What time?
Let's go immediately if you don't mind. I have a hard stop at 3, so.
Okay.
Favor.
Sure.
Okay. And should I end the broadcast?
Grab something.
Yeah.
I think we're finished.
Yes.
Jason's asking.
Yes, we're finished. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you,